Alan, how are you? I'm so happy to have you and to be able to chat with you. How you doing?
I'm excellent. Thank you. Yourself?
I've been really good. Yeah, we've been spending some time down in Florida for a little bit of kind of like to get out of the Northeast, winter, and so that's been really kind of nice. You know, um, but it's also always a two-edged sword. It's like want to go out because it's nice, but like I got work to do. So always conflicted. You know, but things could be worse. Things could be a lot worse.
Awesome, awesome to hear that. I made that weather decision a little over 25 years ago, so I understand what you're doing.
Why? Where are you? I thought aren't you still West Coast?
Yeah, I'm in the Bay Area. No, the weather here is a little better than the
Yeah, oh
East
my
Coast.
God.
And
So, yeah.
no, but I came to work at Cisco in 1998. So just it's
Hmm.
coming up on 26 years since I've
Oh,
been out here.
yeah. Yeah. Where'd you move from?
I moved from Connecticut. I was working for
Oh,
IBM. I was building an e-commerce business.
oh,
And I don't know if we've ever shared this or anybody be interested, but I was working at IBM and they asked me to speak at a conference that was put on by John Gallant and Bob Metcalf.
oh, yeah.
Uh,
Uh-huh.
and, basically they had become a co-sponsor. It was a conference in the networking industry. John Chambers spoke and all kinds of folks and Nicholas Negroponte. And basically I was the only ranking person who couldn't say no to going out,
Uh,
trying to, and I wasn't even working, on the IBM's networking division, which obviously had lost the war pretty clearly by
yeah.
1998. And I was asked to speak after John Chambers and before Nicholas Negroponte. And I called up Gallant and I said, look, send us our money back. And he goes, why? And I go, I'm going on before the Beatles and after the Rolling Stones. Everyone's going to get like a hot dog or a cup of coffee. No one's going to sit and once it cares what I think. And turn around and we turned that into a round table with Charlie
Uh,
Giancarlo,
yeah.
Irfan Ali, who's running 3Com's networking business, and Tom Rambold, who's running Siemens.
Yeah.
And I ambushed those people.
Oh,
They
of
came out in
course.
suits. I came out in a shirt, golf
Yeah.
shirts, and e-business, and
Yeah.
did all kinds of crazy stunts just not to get slaughtered by people who knew what they were doing.
Oh my. Yeah, I remember those were actually really good days. So like this is 98, right? So it's like we're kind of
Yeah,
in the buildup of the internet. It's kind of the routing versus bridging, kind of wars were kind of going on. Yeah, Negroponte was writing that column in Wired magazine, I think it was,
right. He had just written Being Digital, like his
being
book.
digital. Yeah.
And obviously, Cisco was at absolutely like the height of everything
Yeah.
at the time. And, there were still lots of questions. And, it was mostly the 3Com folks
Hmm.
that were out there and they were recruiting me for 3Com. And kind of like when I showed up at Cisco a couple of months later, I got kind of a bunch of disappointed emails like, you
Uh,
went to work for the enemy.
I
It was
know
pretty
there was.
funny.
The Cisco was really all the competitors clearly viewed Cisco as like the company to try to take down, and so many companies tried for so long, and you have to hand it to Chambers and that executive team to be able to execute, manage, grow, um, bigger than anybody, in that
Well, and
marketplace.
also and also to kind of interpret and take action on all the trends. And I like to say, folks, look, I'm out of the networking industry for the
Mm,
last 6, 7 years, but for those who came from it, is like it was kind of hard to beat the internet, the browser, email in the year 2000 problem
yeah,
when you were
yeah,
growing a networking business, right? It was just every possible secular tailwind in the world was driving that.
yeah,
And I think we'll get into this a little bit later, but when we look at kind of the replatformization of a lot of the computing stack around AI,
hmm,
yeah, I think there's a very, it's not exactly parallel, but there's a very powerful tailwind that is going to drive a lot of change in the compute stack. And in a lot of places that did not necessarily have the same kind of drives during the internet wave 25 or 30 years ago. So
yeah.
we're 95, Netscape IPO. So we're literally 30 years from the browser. I
Yeah.
actually had to use Internet Explorer originally when I worked at IBM, and because I was building an e-commerce business, I joined this first day of June 5th, 1995. It was the
Yeah.
launch of Windows 95, and it was the IBM acquisition of Lotus that occurred on my
Yeah.
first day, and there couldn't have been bigger changing of the guard you couldn't imagine.
Wow. Yeah, these were kind of tumultuous times. They kind of shaped, a whole generation of people, like in our industry, and to have to live through those and not and participate, within those, or
Mm-hmm.
you hope that everybody has these kinds of opportunities and these kinds of um, transformations, within their careers, and we've been really extremely fortunate, in ours. But I want to start this and kind of maybe remind you of something, and I'm not sure if you'll remember, but you wrote, I think it was kind of an article, a column, or something. I'm not sure where it was published. It had the biggest impact that an article that I've read, and I forget the topic.
I'm turning all red here, Nick. You're embarrassing me, but please
but
continue.
but you laid it out in the quotes from Jerry Maguire, and
Oh, I did. I had a very Jerry Maguire phase.
it was brilliant. It was like just so good. Like really, it is. And it is the one article that I always remember, and I've copied that once, and I thought, okay, well, we would do this. So we would start with, you had me at hello, and so we already started talking about the journey of your journey. So I thought we kind of go a little bit more into like, your journey. So kind of IBM kind of 95, time frame, the Lotus acquisition, Windows kind of comes into the market. You leave there 4 years later, you go into Cisco. So then, long career at Cisco. So, and actually, I think the way that we got to know each other was really, I think, through Marie Hattar. I think Maria was working for you at some point in time, and I think
we all worked together at Cisco. My second trip, you remember, I worked at Cisco twice. I went, I left,
yeah,
and I came back. Oh, did you just?
I did not.
That's what Zoom does. That has to be an Apple feature. Wow, we're just gonna freak out all your listeners here. Yeah, that's right. I came out. I built an e-commerce business at IBM. I signed up 90 customers. I got them online. This is a true story, by the way. When I got to IBM in the mid 90s, they asked me to build an e-commerce business, and I look around and there's no software to use. There is nothing to use, right? And they asked me to build basically transactional, B2B and B2C shopping and commerce apps. And I wound up licensing the Netscape commerce server from Ben Horowitz's team, who eventually became my investor. I ran it on Sun servers.
Yeah.
And we used this thing called Apache for the application server, which was Linux. And I literally had put money of our budget into the Linux Foundation because they said, we're using shareware, and if this goes down, I've got little kids. How am I going to eat? Right? I'm working for IBM. This is, they take customers very seriously over there. And then clearly you saw the growth of the internet and wanted to head west and come out to Cisco. And I did 2 tours there. I did spend 10 years there, and in between I picked a war with them at Airspace. I've done that a couple of times.
So all right,
I was either working for them or I was picking a war by them, and either getting acquired or fighting. So I had a long relationship there.
So on your first tour of duty at Cisco, so what did you do?
I originally came out as part of this Internet Business Solutions group, which helped people use the internet to run their businesses. This is so old hat. This is almost archaeology. We're doing
Yeah.
actually networking archaeology. So you remember Cisco had the virtual close, 99% of our transactions occurred on the web.
Yeah.
All of our bugs and support was on the internet, right?
Yeah.
And that was kind of new. So
Yeah.
companies did not know how to do that. So having built an e-commerce business, I had worked at a phone company, but I wasn't really a networking person at the time.
Yeah.
And came out there and worked with companies to be like us, right? And then I moved into the product management function in the service provider. We were building call servers to allow people to do IP telephony.
Hmm.
It didn't happen in carriers, as we remember. It actually happened in
Yeah.
the enterprise. So worked on the wrong product,
Oh.
and some of the network observability and management platforms. Those were mine, and like a lot of people. I kind of feel like I'm Benjamin Button. I had earlier in my life worked for the U.S. government. I worked for a phone company. I worked for IBM,
Oh.
and then I joined my first startup, Tahoe Networks,
Yeah.
which was an edge routing platform for the mobile internet. Unfortunately, there was no 3G devices,
Yeah.
and it was kind of a colossal, great technology, really good technical team, complete commercial fireball because there was nobody to sell to it, and there was this company in Boston called Steroids that just kicked us up and down the stairs. Right, they won
Yeah.
everything at the time.
What was the
Cisco
Boston
wound up buying
company?
them. Steroid, S-A.
Sarant. Yeah. No, I remember Sarant. Okay.
And so I left, and I did that. That didn't work out, and then I joined Airspace. I was the first 9 employees at Airspace,
Yeah.
so I went from the government to phone company to IBM now, and pretty much I'm at this point in my career, it's just me and the dog, right? I'm
Yeah.
I'm an investor. I work in a venture firm. I work out of my office. I don't have any direct reports. I don't fill out performance reviews. I don't have to do any of that stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Life
So
is good.
yeah, yeah. So had that great ride in the Cisco in the late '90s, and was just phenomenal. And then what I've learned, in my career. And you had Steve on it. I worked for Steve at Nicira, and
Hmm.
brilliant, like just to me, just like one of the best minds in networking, and also fun guys to hang out with. Just really smart and fun. But you really started to understand where the tailwinds would be,
Yeah.
and then moved my kind of personal career into where there were large drivers. And airspace was one of the kings of Wi-Fi. And I've
Hmm.
owned a lot of go-to-market roles. I owned marketing and product management there. And everyone said, "Oh, you did such a great job marketing." I mean, our first year we did 3 million in revenue. Our second year we did 40 million.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
it wasn't because like
That's
we were that
hmm.
talented. Intel put a chip on every server. I mean, on
Hmm.
every PC that said
Yeah.
Centrino. So everybody wanted to connect to Wi-Fi. So we didn't have to create demand. We just had to satisfy it.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because like in those earlier days, like when people were just starting to understand networking, like just getting email, the first browser, it was just fun. It's like all of a sudden, like, like we had computing and, they were really kind of like standalone little devices, right? To do word processing and so forth. But once networking came in, I think it was just such a fun factor. It's like such a cool factor. It's like, wow, I can send that person a message. It's like, obviously it's all hat and, and it's all, we've been doing it for a long time. But when you get that, like this huge step function increase in functionality of something that you've already been using for a while,
Yeah.
that's such a feeling that you never go back from it. And then obviously it really expanded significantly from that.
Well, and everything had to be created, right? So even when I was at Airspace, I would visit customers, and I painted the Airspace controller really bright blue, because the idea is that you would know it was ours because it looked like the Azure, right? It was Azure blue and looked
Yeah.
like the sky, and we were the Airspace company. And then there would be these orange one RU devices, and those were Riverbed devices, and
Oh
I
yeah.
saw them everywhere. And I
Yeah.
go, how come everybody's deploying that? It says, you know what? Exchange doesn't work really well. So if you wanted to send your email from one place to another outside of the
Yeah.
enterprise campus network, you needed their performance management capability to do that. So we were all just like throwing
Yeah.
pieces, and
Mm.
then first it was just packets, and then it was data, and then it was voice, and then it was video. So
Yeah.
the application, and then there was SaaS, and everything started to get connected, and all of that infrastructure and all of that capability had to be built out. And it was, if you were fortunate enough to work with one of the companies that were winning in that build out, your time went really fast
Yeah. Yeah. If
because
you
you were just
yeah.
running hard every day just to keep up.
Yeah. Yeah. If you caught one of those waves, you were real busy, but having a great time, being busy, you're kind of changing the world. It was,
Well, it's funny. The
uh,
oldest business is actually real estate, and if you pick the right place and you're there early,
mm,
you do really well. And more importantly, if it does really well, they name the town after you, right?
yeah.
So, so you have to pick well, and then you have to establish your position. And they named the town after you, can wind up as governor, right? I
Yeah.
mean, if you think about it, I mean, I live out west, right? And, it came from, the earliest money was in real estate. I mean, look at even
Yeah.
some of the icons of the tech industry, guys like Mark Andreessen. He's married to Lori Arriaga. Her father took all the prune yards and turned them into office parks.
Oh,
Right, so there's so
yeah.
many secular. Like we think about the secular tailwinds. We put this box in here, or we put that software in, but there was also all of these other people's lives who
Yeah.
were affected because they needed places to work, they needed houses, people
Yeah.
had to get them food, and
Yeah.
needed social life. And so, the thing to me, networking industry has always been is kind of like in the corpus of technology. It's the blood system, right?
Yeah.
In fact, the heart is just a blood router,
Mm.
right?
I never thought of my heart as a blood router, but I can see the, but I guess I can
I
see
mean,
like the analogy
it
there.
pushes all the blood around, right, and then it cleans it and does it again. It's kind of, I don't know, I mean, your EKG is a little like BGP, I guess.
All right, another Jerry Maguire transition. Show me the money. So show me the money. So now you're with was it DCVC? All right,
Yeah.
general partner. So the interest in going into the VC industry, and also let's talk about DCVC as well. Like I know they do deep tech, and they seem to be multiple industry sectors. There's a large AI component to that, but there are other interests, that seems like it has in terms of its investment portfolio. So, first of all, like let's just talk about your role there, why you joined, and then what kind of companies you're investing in now.
Sure. So DCVC started as a firm. There were two principals, Matt Acco and Zach Bogue, my partners. It was actually originally started as Data Collective. So the DC and DCVC is Data Collective, and they are both very successful long-term investors and technologists. But when they put Data Collective together about 14, 15 years or so, they were very focused on the infrastructure of big data. So they were investors in Confluent and Elastic and Databricks, right, which
Yeah,
is a giant company. They were seed
gotcha.
investors, early kind of first check-in investors. So they saw, just show me the money, right? They saw the data wave
Mm.
and, were very, very keen investors in that space. And they did that for a while, right? And, they did things that we would think about as computing infrastructure. I mean, they were investors in Pluribus, and, they had other investments kind of closer to the world I came from. They were seed investors in my last company, Illumio, and I
Mm.
got to know them 11 years ago.
Hmm.
And I after Nicira, so I went Cisco, aerospace, Cisco, um, Nicira with Steve, which was
Hmm.
amazing, and then I was at Illumio, which is a cyber unicorn,
Yeah.
and I was there for 5 years, and I decided that I wanted to work on things that would have more meaning for longer term for my kids. It's not a knock
Mhm.
on the tech industry, but the tech industry is a giant, mature industry with lots of talented people. Easily will never notice my departure from it by a long shot.
Yeah.
But I also recognized if I was going to work for a while that the challenge you have from being in an industry for a long time is you have a lot of experience and you have a lot
Yeah.
of pattern recognition. Only about 50% of that is accurate in a new situation. And I was starting to feel maybe I wasn't good at figuring out the good 50% from the bad 50%.
Yeah.
And when you hear people talk about in the day and we used to, you should, as an investor or a company builder, you should usually run in the other direction. Now you're just a bunch
That's
of old
scary
people
now.
telling stories. It is scary because the world changes, and what
Yeah.
worked before didn't work. I remember arguing with folks at Cisco, and now I'm telling a story, right? I'm actually proving my point about
Mm.
the cloud. They're like, no one's ever going to put production workloads in it. That's what they were
Yeah.
talking about in the 2000s, right? Yeah, I don't think so. So, um, what appealed to me about DCVC, and I'll talk more about our firm, is that they were working in areas that if I was to participate, I would have to learn a lot.
Uh,
I'd have to
yeah.
really go back and really study and really understand, and that was very mentally stimulating. And
Mm.
also, I think would take my performance up as opposed to working in areas that I think I know well, that I may
Yeah.
have known well at one time, but may not know as well today.
Mm.
And so DCVC as a firm, we have about $4 billion under management. We will invest kind of through any stage. We really focus on the entrance of AI, computational advantage, into industries that had not had that. So
Mm.
to folks like us to us who've been in the tech industry forever, it's like big deal. Like, I mean, we've seen all of these waves. But if you're talking to a retailer or, I have a company that's in robotic grocery fulfillment, right?
Oh, yeah.
You didn't have that. You had, if you think about it, you had the first wave of e-commerce in groceries. Even today, if somebody walks around with an iPhone and then picks things off of shelves, that's
Yeah.
not really. I'm an investor in a company called Fulfill. We're literally in a 4,000 square foot brownstone. You can have an entire full size supermarket, but there's automation and robotics, and it puts it in a
Uh,
bag ready to go because that is a better way to do e-commerce fulfillment. Not the
yeah.
same as if you want to walk around the aisle and figure out what to make dinner that night and smell if something's fresh or pick it up and read the package.
Yeah.
So, so that industry has been very, very thin margins,
Thin
labor,
margins. Yeah.
inflation, very, very complicated. So DCVC does this in a bunch of areas. We do it in rockets, microbes, computational biology, tech bio, physical security, just an array of industries, automation. And it's really the confluence or merger of AI into industries that have not had that digital transformation moment
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And
So it's almost like moving down market, and those companies that where their margins were kind of thin, all technology is really expensive to them, um, so correct me if I'm wrong. So it seems like they're expanding the markets, or bringing kind of a lot of the automation and AI towards industry sectors that hadn't had them before. They couldn't figure out a way in which they could actually deploy it, or it just was the barriers of entry were just too high for them, before.
it is. I think that's a good way to put it, Nick.
Mm.
One other thing perhaps to think about is that if you're on the vendor side of technology, as I have been, and you're very close to right through, I mean,
Mm.
you have seen hundreds and hundreds and you work with so many companies. To us it's kind of second nature. We see that as a production value, but for
Mhm.
most industries they see technology as a back office
Right.
function.
Yeah.
Right? How do I
Yeah.
track this? How do I run this CRM application? How do I maybe more in entertainment, it's like how do I deliver a movie and make sure it's going to stream? There it's a little bit closer. But for a lot of people, they really see the application universe, which all this infrastructure powers, as productivity enhancement.
Yeah.
And but we have a company, for example, very well-known, Recursion Bio. My partner, Zach, leads our investment, and he's aboard. It's a public company. They have built an AI engine for small molecule therapeutic delivery. They're partnered with NVIDIA, very well-known.
Hmm.
I mean, literally, they have built an engine that replaces lab scientists.
That
Not because
replaces what? Oh,
lab
lab
scientists. You
scientists.
think about, like, you're trying to come up with a new cancer therapeutic,
Yeah.
or a drug. This people with beakers, but now you can actually create digital twins. You can emulate that. So the actual production of
Mm.
pharmaceuticals is being
Yeah.
done through AI. It doesn't get rid of technical people, or it doesn't even but it fuses them in a very, very unique way. And they have one of the world's largest GPU setups
Mm.
in the pharmaceutical industry. In fact, they've even branded their engine. They just launched it in January, and NVIDIA was on stage and invested $50 million in it, because you could
Mm.
start to see that fusing
Yeah.
happening everywhere. And so the money is about industries transforming, either to be faster, more productive, to be more accurate. And I spent a lot of time on healthcare, and we don't have enough doctors and nurses.
No,
It
that's for
takes a
sure.
long
Yeah.
time to train a surgeon,
Yeah.
right? It takes
Yeah.
decades. It's not like you just don't go up and go to school. You also have to have physical acuity and
Yeah.
stamina and great hand-eye coordination, in addition to being able to have to do all of that studying and residency. So literally it takes decades to
Yeah.
build some of the most highly skilled. So how do you make those people, while they're performing medicine, which is physical, right? Not
Mhm.
reading something on WebMD, how do you make them more productive? So
Yeah.
computational capabilities are coming into that, and we see this across the board.
Mm.
Creation of new energy sources, all kinds of things like that. So
You know,
I went there because I like to joke, Nick, that if the IT world is about $4.5 trillion, that's
yeah.
pretty good. The rest of the global GDP is about another $90 trillion.
Yeah. It makes sense because like most corporations spend between 2 and 3% of their revenue on IT, right? So
Yeah.
you would think that, up from a global GDP point of view, it should translate, But
And some of them grow faster. Also, I think IT has slowed up. It's really in the single digits. I mean, there's some spike years and then there's some down years.
yeah,
So that
true.
means, you were talking about show me the money. That means the money shifts,
Yeah.
right? It goes
Yeah.
from the large actor. So, you look at an ascending networking company like Arista,
Mhm.
right? Well, I don't know if Arista's creating new budget, but I'm pretty sure they're taking share.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
The pie is growing, but
yeah,
it's not growing that big, like
yeah.
what, 5-10%, but yeah, so it's like, yeah, they're kind of growing share. It's almost like the mobile carriers, right? There's only a certain amount of mobile phones you need. And so and we're in saturation. So it's like now they're just stealing share from each other. Right. So I think that's kind of like what you're getting at. It's like, yeah, IT is, it's growing, but like, there isn't, but it's growing single digits, and new players, unless like there's a major breakthrough, which is like, which is really what we're going to talk about around the AI side of things, does that, now allow that market to either transform, totally change, or is that become an enabler for another massive growth, in our industry, right?
Right. No, it's a great point.
Yeah. So I have to, the two things you've reminded me of, and I thought I'd share them with you. One is that it was Doug Comer who at one of the ONUGs who said, he said all science is computer science, and all business is digital business. And I was like, Doug, man, that's like so insightful, And so I've used it all the time. So I kind of view DCVC in that regard. It's like you're
Well,
kind of,
the human body is about 10 trillion lines of code.
yeah.
So that to me is God's a programmer, right?
Well, if
I
you
mean, we
believe
are
in
literally,
divine,
yeah, we are literally programming DNA
yeah,
cells now.
yeah,
So like,
that's huge.
and it's funny. I had a company that we sold to GE Health called Caption AI, and it was a navigation program that would allow an untrained person, by following a bunch of arrows, to capture an EKG. Very exciting. And the algorithms and the computer vision put that together, and they would follow it. And then
Yeah.
it knew when it had enough data, it captures something called the ejection fraction, which
Yeah.
dictates how efficient your heart is. And
Yeah.
then it would capture it. But you didn't have to be a doctor or a sonographer or a nurse to use it. And it's something that did that. But, I think about it, but, the funny thing is, if you deal with cardiology at all, the heart uses electricity,
Yeah. Hmm.
right? So, I mean, like, and if you have AFib, if you go into arterial fibrillation, which just means a irregular heartbeat, they shock you back.
Yeah.
So the human body is actually part of a computer system too. It's got code and it's got electrons
Yeah.
working. We just don't think about it that way.
Yeah, well, that's for sure, and that's like, that's been the kind of the beauty for biomedical engineering is
Yeah.
to try to kind of figure out how can we kind of manipulate, our biology just the way we manipulate like circuits or build circuits to manipulate, current and voltage, and it's you're right. Most of us really don't kind of think about the body in those terms, but it's all basically little pulses of electricity kind of flowing around, little ones and zeros,
Nerves,
inside us.
brain, right? I mean, we're talking because there's something firing up here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're just,
Shoots in.
it's pretty interesting. And, for me, for people who are in the technology industry, paying more attention to this, I think, is if we have a $4 or $5 trillion tech economy, it could be double or triple if they can move with all of these other ships. That's why I pointed out the Recursion pharmaceutical. People
Yeah.
should pay a lot of attention to what an AI engine and an AI data center looks like. And it's not just about the speed of the packets and things, but, we are moving, we have had companies in automation and autonomy, which is, another word for edge computing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not wearing my Apple Watch right this moment, but like your Apple Watch is a health monitor.
Check
And
mine like every day. It's like I've gotten so big onto like kind of biomarkers and actually I got to talking about Steve Mulaney. So Steve and I had this really good conversation about, kind of biomarkers and staying healthy and, and what are the things like, we all check out, it's like, I'm totally with you. Like my iWatch is, I probably spend about like 10 minutes with it in the morning, just like checking out how I did the day before and what I'm going to be doing during the day, health wise,
Yeah, I mean, and that's on you all of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, you might say, hey, I spend too much time in front of screens, but your Apple Watch is literally ubiquitous computing back to your iPhone.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have one other, thought that kind of came up. And when you were talking about like, coming into, DCVC and thinking about kind of your kind of career experience and maybe being able to contribute into different industry sectors where you didn't have kind of a large data set, there. And so we tend to like, some people could do it. They can kind of like go into these new areas and they can kind of leverage, past learning models and get up to speed pretty quick. But I remember having a conversation with Jay Cherie about this right before she joined Arista, as their CEO. And she was like, oh, I was just really just thinking about doing the whole green energy thing. So this is the lull between like her when she left Cisco and before she took over Arista. So she was like thinking, oh, well, I was really thinking about doing the kind of green energy thing and starting to do something there. And she probably spent 6 months kind of looking at that. And then she realized, I really understand networking really well. I think I'm going to do that.
It worked out pretty well, right?
Yeah, it worked out well for her. Yeah. Yeah. But I think, I'm very similar to like that. But I see like the way that, that I've been kind of processing the AI stuff is one as a consumer of it, obviously, but really how it's impacting our kind of the infrastructure industry. And I know that you Alan, I think you've always had that. You lived at a different maybe intersection. It was the intersection between kind of the applications and the infrastructure, and really the kind of the business drivers for that, and how it's actually changing the business. You know, so let's still talk about, show me the money, but what kind of world are we starting to enter into? You've been spending a lot of time now, like in the AI space, so what's your, have you started to put together like some mental models around, how you things are going to progress, or things to watch for, or maybe identifying kind of major transformations or transitions that we should either be looking for or we're about to enter?
Uh, yeah, I have thought about it a little. I don't know if I have a masterful thesis in the space, but I think there's. By the way, my advice for everyone who wants to answer that question is everybody starts to need to read the NVIDIA annual report and the AMD annual report, because you have to pay attention to what they're doing, because there's multiple companies, obviously OpenAI and co-pilots and all of these things.
Yeah.
But there's a couple of things that I think we are very much children of the client server era of computing. And if
Right.
anything,
Yeah.
first wave of the internet was client server over distributed environment. I had a
Mm-hmm.
browser, or I had an application, and went out and talked to a server. It used to be my own wiring closet, then data center, and then now some cloud or some SaaS application at some cloud, and kind of brought it back and had that interaction. Then the world became much more dynamic and distributed. So we took an application, we broke it into its constituent parts, and it was everywhere. So you had this distributed computing wave, and a lot of the technology was built on graph theory. Those are antecedents for
Yeah.
what is happening architecturally, in my mind, in AI. So, massive amounts of computing, right, is on one hand. So there will be kind of the idea of an AI data center. The large language models, whether it is Google or OpenAI or new search engines like Perplexity AI, which is a super interesting app, they very much have an AI data center type of fabric and focus. But when you look at other models, a lot of them are a lot more distributed, and you start to see, more edge computing influence. So I don't think there's one answer. I think there's going to be a new architecture, right? Remember, for those
Yeah.
of us who came out of networking, there was like wiring closet, data center, cloud, right, or variants of that over
Yeah.
time. And they were kind of very distinct, but not very interactive. And that really changed in the last 10 years. And the kind of the workload and the bandwidth is changed, right? I mean, the biggest change to bandwidth in the last 15 years was video.
Yeah, for sure.
And right. And so there are extensions of that. The extension of video processing is computer vision. So today, I am, I had just come off, you're in Boston when you're not in,
Yeah.
I was the chairman, I was an investor in Evolve Technology. It's a weapons detection company. It's everywhere in Boston. It's every sports team, it's opera houses, and it uses an array of sensors and AI to understand when you walk through a venue, whether you have a phone or a gun in your pocket. It reconstructs that. It does that at the edge. And it also uses computer vision to say, oh, that threat is associated with this person, and we know that the weapon is in their bag, or the threat, if we don't know what it is, or on their hip or on their shoulder, right? And that's happening right there at the edge.
Yeah.
To do that. So the world is building a very sensory and immediate, and those things have to happen and be processed right there and then. Time frame, efficiency, and so you're having, they're not islands of computing. They're actually kind of distinct pieces of named real estate that is emerging. So if you're in the tech industry and you were, whether you were a server manufacturer, or if you were in storage, or if you were in networking, kind of the classic, triangle, of hardware, you have to kind of decompose and figure out where those are going and understand what happens. If not, you get stuck like Intel. And look, I
Yeah.
like Pat, and the x86 architecture for a very long time had a run, but
Long
not
time. Yeah.
long time, but not as applicable to these large language models. And what
Yeah.
is the data that goes into it? So we have large language models, but we also now have large video models.
Yeah.
There are tools that now run through a supermarket or a store at night. They do all the inventory. They know what everything is,
Mm.
and they have to be processed. So if you're in the tech industry, you have to move beyond people either entertaining themselves, buying things, or inputting, data into little cells, like into a CRM system, and understand. So you're right. I'm always kind of on the application set back in,
Yeah.
and and process that and figure out where you're advantaged and where you can win, and are you tailoring your technology and your go to market to
Yeah.
be a player in these spaces, because it's kind of wide open.
It's
Like, I
wide
would be very
open. Yeah.
excited to be in the tech industry now. Like, I left it because I want to do something else, but it's like being an ex-smoker. He said, I don't do that anymore. But every once in a while, you're in the corner having a puff. So
Yeah. Secondhand
I
smoke is actually kind of nice.
it smells pretty good. I remember that, right? I don't do it anymore. It's bad for you, or I shouldn't
Yeah.
promise my kids I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
So I think there are flavors of enterprise AI in knowledge management and people. You think
Yeah.
about, a lot of organizations are run on systems of record
Yeah.
or human tribal knowledge, right? And
Mm.
you look at the turnover in so many businesses, and literally that knowledge walks out the door.
Sure does. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Um,
and so, to me, there's a business, an
yeah.
AI business, even in the tech industry,
Yeah.
about how to do that. There are some new technologies, a company called Glean. So the people are kind of rebuilding the enterprise knowledge and search engine piece
Oh,
of that. But that's very hard. That's very broad and horizontal. And I think there are also verticals that go with it. So I've actually never been more excited about the opportunities for technologists, because the world moves really fast, and great
mm.
technologies thrive in that. I mean, I have a friend who works for the Times, Tom Friedman, and Tom always talks about how systems prosper. And if you think about
Mm.
the American economy and why it's such a wonder, we are, and I'm quoting him, so I have to give him credit, right?
Yeah. No,
Jerry Maguire.
that's
I'll
what.
just do it without a lot of hints. He talks about America's advantage is taking complex systems and adapting them, and also taking
Mm.
people, right?
Yeah.
Trained, knowledgeable people, and adapting them, right? The
Yeah.
positive side of the immigration, story of our country,
Yeah.
right? I know there's a lot of arguing about immigration, but like, it's because you take that knowledge, you take that energy, and you take that adaptability, and
Yeah.
you apply it. And so the world is readapting, and the technology industry can be an enormous enabler of that,
Yeah.
and figuring that out. I mean, and just to use an old, so we just hit the 20th anniversary. This year we're going to hit the 20th anniversary of aerospace getting acquired by Cisco. It was
Oh,
acquired at the end. It was announced at the end of 2024. And it's like 20 years since Wi-Fi, right?
yeah.
But Wi-Fi and cellular networks completely changed how we operate and GPS, right? Something like completely changed how we operate our lives. They're all
Yeah.
second nature.
Yeah. Well,
They
that's for
weren't in the
sure. Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah.
They weren't in the
Well,
beginning.
yeah, and I think, well, in the beginning too, it was I think the Wi-Fi Alliance really did a really great job, kind of pulling together kind of some standards work and getting a whole bunch of companies on the same page to be able to compete and create an ecosystem, there, and then the market, especially on the consumer side, obviously the consumer side started to to pick it up, because again, it was another one of those things. Oh, I don't have to like pull these wires to the house. It's like, oh my God, this is so much easier. It's like so much more fun, you know. It's like I can get everything, you know, connected up.
But also
You
change
know?
how you live, because you sit on the couch with your laptop in front of you, and change your social behavior, and you probably buy more things because it's so
Yeah,
easy, right?
yeah,
Thanks to those guys in Seattle and everyone else, right? So it has societal changes, and
that's a
technology
good
has
point.
always been an enabler of that.
Yeah,
And that's why I'm at DCVC, because I'm focused on the implications for our health, the planet, our
yeah,
safety. Those are
yeah,
the areas I'm working, but they all reach back to
yeah,
the tech stack.
yeah,
And so I think if you're on the other side, you have to look, I'm looking back to the tech stack, and people that are in the tech industry need to look forward, right? I remember
yeah.
in 2003, we got a note that our kids were going to have I'm old now, right? A laptop program in middle school, my oldest child.
Mm.
And I asked the principal, can I come see them? And said, well, how are they all going to get connected? And they had kind of like a bunch of ratty Netgear
Oh, yeah.
access points, like sitting on radiators. So, well, let's say some airspace gear fell off a truck, and Pleasanton, our middle school had the best blanket of Wi-Fi of any school in Northern California, right?
Uh,
Uh,
it's good to have a
and
connected dad.
yeah, find a TME, so you can bring some Ethernet cables, some power points, a box, and some access points to do that. And that was very, very early, but now you wouldn't think twice. And now,
Yeah,
so that brought the internet into the classroom, and now the large language models are bringing other like are you writing your college, are you writing your essay, or is ChatGPT writing and you're just translating it onto
yeah.
the page, or and they probably don't even write it anymore, you probably take it from your laptop, you just email it to the teacher.
Well,
uh,
that goes too far, and in my point of view. But like I use that a lot. For example, like most of our conferences, all our sessions are now written with ChatGPT. But it's like really kind of guiding it, you know. So if there's an iterative factor in there, and it speeds things up. And if you have a writer's block, it kind of eliminates that immediately, you know, and that you can actually start to be creative, and get obviously immediate response, you know. But yeah, like kids like
of a
doing their essay.
yeah, complex adaptive system, you're doing that, right?
Yeah,
I think about the ONA group, right?
yeah,
Really smart leading technologists, both from industry as
mm,
well as from the user community,
yeah,
coming together, making it forward. That's a complex adaptive system powered by tech.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
like on the end user side, it's like they're supporting a business.
Yes,
So
yeah,
they bring that back, and it's, to me, that's why things like ONAG and industry forums are so valuable, because that's where this stuff gets translated, and people say, "Oh, now I know how to help
yeah,
them."
yeah.
They
A
don't
lot
know
of
it
you.
otherwise. You make it up by yourself.
I know. A lot of
Oh, as they say,
euphoria moments.
buy the engineers for the engineers and of the engineers.
Yeah, well, hopefully you have some really smart and connected engineers that are kind of
They
building
are.
something that's, you know.
I mean, the problem is they're all about 7 or 8 or 10 years old. They're I mean, the ability of kids to advantage themselves of this technology to write code and do these things.
Yeah.
I mean, it was at Illumia that we started hiring freshman summer interns, freshman
Mm,
college. I don't think
yeah.
companies are quite ready to hire high school students,
Yeah.
but
But freshman
I don't
college
know.
students, that's early. Yeah.
Well, you remember you didn't do it until people's junior year, and now we took
Yeah.
freshmen. And but at some point in time, probably you probably get a summer job working as a software engineer while you're still in high school. I mean, it's like the NBA. The NBA used to track you in college, then they went to
Yeah.
high school. They track kids in middle school,
Yeah. Oh my.
right? So
Yeah.
you're probably gonna be looking for star. I don't mean to be creepy, but you're gonna start looking for star programmers in middle school for high school at some point in time, and then it's going to happen. I have
Yeah.
zero doubt.
Yeah. Well, I love that you did hire like freshmen, for interns. I think that's to give them that experience like early on is, I think, invaluable, because like at that age, their minds are so plastic, and everything is experiential. for them, and to have that experience, at an early stage, I think it sets them in such a great direction in their careers. So hats off, for doing that over at Illumio.
Oh, by the way, it was recruiting. We kept some of them after college.
Oh, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, oh yeah.
Yeah.
And by the time they came back for like their junior, we got them at freshman, they were
Yeah.
valuable.
Yeah.
Like, because they would go back to school and they'd come back, and some of them did, side projects. So once you have a complex adaptive system, we all have learned this, and certainly COVID taught us all the lesson is that your organization is not your building. Like, it's great to have everybody in the building. I'm very for that, but we've all adapted work into remote workers.
Yeah.
And we've built systems to do that. I mean, one of the best coding companies, right, is GitLab, right? And it's purely, right. GitLab is an amazing company. It's purely, I have a friend that's on the board. It's purely distributed.
Yeah. The behind the scenes of GitLab, the GitLab organization.
Behind the scene is there are no offices.
Yeah, beautiful.
Well, but they're supporting developers.
Yeah.
Who are increasingly distributed. So lots of opportunities for cybersecurity, performance, and systems to make advantage of increasingly remoter workforces.
Yeah. So I think this all kind of like this discussion fit into the category of help me help you. All right. And so you guys helping, kids, come in, and then at the end, they're really helping you, but the whole tech industry, and then the whole tech industry, as well, it's like, in businesses, businesses know their business, and they're looking for either productivity advantages, efficiency advantages. And I think what they got on the internet era was both the established businesses, they did get those, benefits and values, but they also got new revenue streams as well. And like even what you were talking about in the very beginning, where like at Cisco was like one of the first companies where if you order something through Cisco, it would be an order that was taken that would go to like some third party who was doing the fulfillment and maybe even manufacturing, the device, and they would ship it. It's almost like it was like for some particular products, Cisco was the brand. And it was the e-commerce engine, but all the fulfillment was being done by its partners. And I think the internet enabled, those kinds of new business models, and obviously the birth of Netflix and all of that. I wonder now in the AI space, I know, for example, like at this, we have an ONU coming up in Dallas. We're changing the name. It's going to be called the AI Networking Summit. And so the way that we've been processing this is that there are both kind of AI workloads and applications that are going to be consumed and utilized by every corporation, and then there's also like within the networking and security businesses, they're also adopting AI, and some of them are kind of like the first generation is that maybe their manuals are going to start, having kind of modules of like, kind of chat bots and stuff like that. But there's like now from the ground up new products that are going to be coming out that are native AI. We're going to there'll be a firewall that'll be announced at ONUG, and where it eliminates, all of the toil of managing all those firewall rules. It has the memory.
You could just use Illumio. Illumio's been doing that for years.
Yeah, well, there's. I love Illumio.
Sorry, I couldn't resist. Yeah,
no, it's okay.
It's built on top of graph theory. I mean, PJ Kerner built a graph theory database, which is kind of on ramps. But I'm sorry, Nick. I've just had a little bit of fun with you.
No, it's okay. It's okay, Alan. Well, so I think that we're going to start seeing a whole range of new products out in the marketplace too that really are addressing kind of the life cycle management piece, and then also too just the way that we've as the vendor community and the supplier community, management has always been somewhat of a secondary and afterthought. And I think we finally maybe have tools that will enable that afterthought to be part of the value proposition, the tight value proposition, where you don't have a lot of cutting and pasting and in essence really toil on behalf of both engineers, like both network engineers and security engineers in the industry. So I think, we're kind of viewing this. It's almost like in the early days of the internet, there was the unforeseen applications. You just didn't know. It's like all of a sudden you have this kind of technology stack that's available, and you have people who are engaged with it and are creating and innovating with it, and something's going to happen there, and we're just not quite sure exactly what it is, but it's gonna sort its way out. And I kind of get there's a lot of that right now in the AI space. Copilot, you mentioned that a second ago, Alan. I got to say, in the financials in particular, everyone is using Copilot, internally. And so there's a lot of homegrown AI. There's now new shadow AI groups that are popping up within the large enterprise as well. So it's not falling upon, I wouldn't say falling upon, there's actually some hedging, with IT
Mm-hmm.
organizations to actually take over the kind of the AI, reins. And so that's kind of like the chief AI officer and their group is like now kind of like focusing on AI for the business itself. And then also once you have kind of business applications, then they want to actually obviously have the infrastructure, for that, too. So I know these are some of the things that we're kind of starting to see
Mm-hmm.
that people are struggling with, right now, because there's no design patterns on how do you approach this. What does networking really kind of look like in this AI, age, and what does security look like in this AI age, as well? What's the relationship between applications and the developers and that infrastructure? What is for sure, it's like networking was always a way in which we connected things, physically connected things, whether that's like, from physical wires or wireless. Um, and we use security to kind of secure that, right? In multiple different ways. But now that those relationships are also starting to change. And I think
Right, right, right.
what's being presented to the application is, hey, here is an infrastructure service. And with that service, what will also, we have these data points that we're aggregating from a wide range of this infrastructure. And now we could present to the application maybe a path, from the end user to the application that has a security posture to it. It's not just, OSPF and, lowest cost routing, but it
Right.
has a whole, range of different metrics, that it's using to kind of deliver a service to the application. And in essence, really, it's guided by policy management for the end user to get a great experience. I don't know. Those are just some of the things that we're kind of thinking about. I think you might be thinking things maybe a little bit more holistic. It's like, how do you take all the data points associated with the business so that you can better manage that business, and how AI might be able to, help
Right.
provide assist, on decisions and logic and, seek markets, that maybe weren't visible, to management.
Well, I
Just
do
as an
think about it
example.
the way you do too, Nick. I mean, I was worked with Mist when they got started, right? And Mist is a
Yeah.
policy, AI-based, policy-based, um, Wi-Fi network in its initial inception,
Yeah.
and it studied patterns, right, and understood times of day and traffic patterns, and then allowed the systems to kind of basically self-manage it itself. I think what you said is super interesting. So the ideas of things like documentation,
Mm,
right? Like, so
yeah.
think about like vendor documentation as opposed to having a vendor co-pilot that you could
Yeah.
say, I'd like you to set up my network like this. What are my options?
Mm,
And here's what I look like based on what I've just told you. If you were to have surgery, and I hope you don't, but if you have
thank
surgery,
you.
your surgeon will have a preoperative plan. They will consult all your scans, your prior doctors. They will build a game plan for the surgery before they go into that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I think AI and language models in particular, and machine learning specifically, have the ability to start to game plan, a lot of these things, right? I mean, and
Yeah,
there are technologies like Kentic that see vast amounts of traffic on the internet, but it's starting to feed game planning for folks, as opposed to saying Amazon East is down and hey, none of us are going to get this and this working today. So I think that opportunity is for AI to be effective, though. I do think they have to kind of break down three walls, right? They have to, it's what vendors tell you about how their systems work, right? Because you are
yeah,
deploying capabilities. It's what you know about your own environment.
for sure. Yeah,
And then thirdly, a lot of technology enablement is fused on third-party sites. Like, hey, I tried this, like
right.
there's,
Yeah,
in theater, like when they talk about breaking the audience, they talk about breaking down the fourth wall, right? But
mm,
breaking down the wall, because it takes all of those, and then obviously there's just the skills and capabilities of an individual that is tasked with operations or security in networking. Those things over time will become more fused with machine learning.
yeah.
I'm not sure we're quite ready for like neural networks saying, in the afternoon, all my guys are not paying attention until they've had their coffee, so we'll do this, right? We have a little bit of kind of time before the Terminator shows up and all of this, but you do have those same capabilities because they are effectively operational tasks,
Yeah,
and they react to patterns and they react to influxes, changes in traffic patterns and things like that. And to your point, there's least cost routing, and then there's performance, and there's express lanes, and there are all of these things. Um, I wonder a little about networking, if it's going to be a little like autonomous cars, and basically, and when you put autonomous cars and people together, you run into challenges. I
mm,
always think about the
yeah,
Jeff Goldblum line in Jurassic Park: dinosaurs and men, two species separated by 65 million years, right? And when you put them together, it becomes a horror movie. So the ability to infuse autonomy, which basically means, a form of AI, into complex systems like networks and obviously applications that they're supporting, will it benefit from more autonomy, right?
yeah, mm,
And those systems being able to talk to each other. So once again, early days, just like those 20 years ago, those, hey,
yeah,
when Wi-Fi went up, people say, hey, this is not safe, I'm going to punch a hole in my firewall, and I'm going to bleed my corporate secrets to the coffee shop across the street where people are sitting with their
yeah,
laptop, and they figured it out, right?
yeah.
And it's, people don't talk about Wi-Fi security as much anymore.
Ah, yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah,
so I think we'll see a similar trend, but like everything else, you have to separate the the hyperbole
yeah. We're
from
in
the
a yeah,
from the reality. We're in a hyperbole phase, and there's a lot of great things going on,
yeah,
but I can tell you that ChatGPT didn't file my taxes. I spent all this weekend gathering up little
yeah,
slips of paper and downloading
yeah,
forms, and I mean, it could, but it didn't. It took a lot
yeah,
of my a lot of my time, and from you brought something up earlier, and what you said indirectly made me think about it. When you move into the investor side, the most important thing, there's two things that are really important. It's like, have you spotted a great technology? Have you spotted a great team? But
mm,
as opposed to when you're in a management position at a company, is what level of empathy and understanding. So the ability for me to go into different industries was not based on that I was going to go and improve the algorithms for detecting the ejection fraction of car caption health. What
yeah,
was my experience was is that I did 4 startups in a row,
yeah,
and I understand how startups work, and I
mm,
understand what like you don't just show up every 2 months and say, why haven't you done this, right?
yeah,
And you understand the
mm,
cadence, and you understand how people make decisions and how they invest and how they spend their time. And I think the maybe a subject worth talking about at AIonic would be, how do you prepare yourself as a professional
Yeah.
for this wave, whether it's technical understanding, whether it's business requirements, whether it is empathy for something that is, somewhat scary.
Yeah. Oh,
And
for sure.
you should bring Martin Casado on sometime. It was very funny when we were at Nicira, and Steve could have told this story, is that, we said there's going to be a lot fewer network admins.
Hmm.
We said
Yeah.
software made defined networks, network virtualization, just like VMware got rid of, changed the world of the network of the server administrator.
Sure.
We're going to do the same thing with networks.
Yeah.
And there was a person who got in touch with Martin and asked him and said, "Am I really going to lose my job the way you said?" They were
Yeah.
literally worried.
Yeah.
And once again, as a vendor, you do a lot of arm waving. It's happening right now. You better get in front of it. I've
Yeah.
never done that personally, of course, but
Yeah.
moment, right? Right.
Yeah.
So I think understanding the cultural implications for people in the technology industry, as well as the technical and economic implications, is really, really important. And learning how to speak to people
Yeah.
about this, so that they have confidence and they want to engage these systems, as opposed to thinking about them as job killers, right?
Yeah.
When chat came out, everybody's people started writing some kind of pretty mediocre marketing copy with it,
Yeah.
and they're like, "That's it. If you're a Marcom writer, you're done. I don't
You're
need you.
done.
I'm going to put it in chat." But it kind of
Yeah.
produces some fairly boring stuff.
Oh my
Not
God.
exactly
Yeah.
stuff that's going to motivate a lot of action by people. But whenever there's a technology wave, there is fear and uncertainty and doubt,
Yeah.
right? There's FUD. And
Yeah.
being able to unpack that will probably be the sign of organizations that will succeed as well, because they'll be smart, but they'll also be open to the possibilities,
Yeah.
as opposed to that Cisco executive in '08 who's told me they're never going to use Amazon for production workloads. Why are you wasting your time on it?
Yeah, and it's it's really insightful, for you to bring up the skill set, and because like actually I kind of feel like kind of network operators, network engineers, to maybe a lesser degree, kind of on the security side, they're always getting beaten down. Like, cloud providers, like, oh, we're going to take away your job, because everything's just going to be click, 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 as we kind of move the applications, into the cloud. The same thing, like on the software defined, side, there's always kind of like a wave where they're in peril, and I think on this transition, I think what we're thinking, I forget who said this, but it's like it has such a ring of truth, is that AI is not going to take your job. Somebody with AI skills is going to take your job. So you really have to skill up, in this space. And I think you're right. Like actually for this, this coming up, to go for all of this year and probably, here on out too, is that like we're doing something called Triple T, and it's like, tools, technologies, and techniques. So like these are kind of 10-minute presentations, about, how do you skill up? And so here's a tool that you can use. Here's a technique that you could, deploy. Here's a technology that you should consider, as well. So, that was really insightful, for you to mention that. I think the career path, is really important right now, because I think this is the first time where there will be change. It's like organizationally, we can see that AI can really fundamentally change the way kind of an IT organization was structured around these silos and become much more horizontal. We've been saying that for a long time, but this might be the technology that actually does that.
Yeah.
So, Alan, I think probably a good place to stop.
Yeah, I
Alan,
think we've beaten the audience at the submission. They probably logged off about a half hour ago, but I agree with you, Nick. Look, it's great spending time, and I think just to close, I think you've done a great job with owning. I mean, when I grew up, you went to Interop, and when I see leaders in the networking community, they go to Onunk, right?
Yeah.
They do all these things. They learn about what's going on. They watch what their peers doing. And the part that I think you may not get enough credit for is you've created a community. And ultimately, being part of that community is super important for people in the industry, because that helps them make the transition as much as any of the technical knowledge that they pick up, because they actually have people they know and they can pick up the phone and call and say, what'd you think about that? I mean, I don't know how many relationships were started in Oneg, marriages or job changes, but I'm sure there were plenty over the years.
There's a lot. Yeah. No, thank you for that. It's like, actually, it's like it's the best high that I get, from it, is that, we did create this really great community, and seeing a lot of people like twice a year. And just the feedback, that we get from them, it's like, even board members, like our board members, like, I said, listen, it's amazing. I get like this special, consideration, from the vendor community, because like they know I'm on the owner board, and it's like, so if I say something, nice about a particular vendor, that's going to get heard across all the other vendors,
Why did you talk nicely about me? Yes, I get it. Awesome.
Yeah, so there's a lot of like, value and benefit that people get. And so thank you for saying that. That was nice. Alan, it was always a pleasure to chat with you. Thanks so much for taking so much time, and talking.
Thanks.